Breaking news coming out this morning as we're hearing the U.S. has issued emergency evacuations out of Israel, as we're hearing a potential strike on Iran is currently looming. Take a look at the latest headlines with me so you can see it for yourself. U.S. says staff can leave Israel, urging speed as possible Iran strike looms. In an email to the embassy workers Friday morning today, Ambassador Mike Huckabee warned them that if they want to leave Israel, they should do so today. So let me know your thoughts. Do you think we're going to see a strike here in the next 24 hours? A lot of people saying Saturday typically is when we will see a strike occur. U.S. evacuates Israel embassy staff as Trump's Iran decision looms. And here's the official website. U.S. Embassy of Jerusalem, travel advisory update, authorized departure of non-emergency U.S. government personnel and family members of personnel from U.S. Mission Israel. Also, China today tells its citizens in Iran to evacuate as soon as possible. Now, also, this is coming as the second U.S. aircraft carrier approaches the Middle East as nuclear deal with Iran remains elusive. Now, today, we're hearing that J.D. Vance, the vice president, said this will not be an endless war. J.D. Vance says any U.S. strike on Iran won't spiral into a long conflict. He is saying they're going to get in, they're going to take care of business, they're going to strike and strike with precision. Iran says the U.S. must drop excessive demands, though, in the nuclear negotiations. Iran had said yesterday things went well, that they made progress. We're hearing immediately after on their state television, they said, we deny all of the U.S. requests, and now they're saying that the things that you were demanding, they're excessive, they must be dropped. Now we're hearing today that Donald Trump has said that he's been very disappointed with the talks as he is still determining the path forward. And take a look at this. The UN nuclear watchdog says it's unable to verify whether Iran has suspended all uranium enrichment, as the IAEA is saying they are not getting access, even though Iran is saying that they will. And take a look at this also, concerns about the U.S. being under potential attack of Iran, where Iran's ballistic missiles can reach, and how close they are to the United States of America. This coming as just about a month ago, we saw that the Pentagon had warned of potential attacks on U.S. soil. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. It does look like we're going to be heading in the direction of war here very soon. Evacuations are being issued today. I shared with you yesterday, and it was confirmed that Donald Trump was in closed-door meetings deciding what the next steps would be after the talks appeared to yield no type of negotiation, agreement, deal. It looks like we're going to be going the path of strikes and war. Now, I'm going to be playing for you the latest video footage and articles so that way you can see it for yourself. Now, before we dive in, do me a quick favor. If you appreciate the updates, please take a quick second, hit that thumbs up like button for me. Just takes a moment, really helps out the channel a ton, spreads this out further across the YouTube platform. To stay up to date, it's totally free. Why not go ahead and hit the subscribe button, turn on that notification bell. It looks like we could be entering into war here very soon. I will keep you up to speed on everything. And as you know, here on the channel, I cite all of the sources. I put it on the screen, read right from it, so that way you can know and rest assured this is the latest as of today, February 27, 2026. It's currently 1:46 p.m. Central Standard Time here in Houston, Texas. But with that being said, let's go ahead and dive right in. Start off with some video footage to get you caught up as to what is going on.
You're watching live now from Fox. Welcome back. We do want to turn now to some breaking news that came in just a short time ago here. This is a U.S. Embassy Jerusalem post. It reads, on February 27, 2026, the Department of State authorized the departure of non-emergency U.S. government personnel and family members of U.S. government personnel from Mission Israel due to safety risks. In response to security incidents and without advance notice, the U.S. Embassy may further restrict or prohibit U.S. government employees and their family members from traveling to certain areas of Israel, the Old City of Jerusalem, and the West Bank. Persons may wish to consider leaving Israel while commercial flights are available. Once again, this just coming in here a short time ago as the U.S. issues this evacuation advisory in Israel for non-emergency government staff. Now, this coming after Iran and the United States held hours of indirect negotiations just yesterday over Tehran's nuclear program, but walked away without a deal, leaving the danger of another Mideast war on the table as the U.S. has gathered a massive fleet of aircraft and warships in the region. Oman's foreign minister, who mediated the talks in Geneva, said there had been significant progress in the negotiation without elaborating. But just before those talks ended, Iranian state television reported that Tehran was determined to continue enriching uranium, rejected proposals to transfer it abroad, and sought the lifting of international sanctions, indicating it was not prepared to meet President Trump's demands. Trump wants a deal to constrain Iran's nuclear program. Iran also hopes to avert war, but maintains it has the right to enrich uranium and does not want to discuss other issues like its long-range missile program or support for armed groups like Hamas and Hezbollah. We do know that technical talks involving lower-level representatives would continue next week in Vienna, which is the home of the International Atomic Energy Agency. The United Nations atomic watchdog likely would be critical in any deal. To share more on all of this, I do want to turn to one of our Fox News correspondents, Trey Yingst. He has more.
The USS Gerald R. Ford leaving Greece for Middle Eastern waters as the U.S. and Iran tried to reach a deal during a third round of nuclear talks in Switzerland. Iran's foreign ministry indicated progress had been made, saying the two sides discussed proposals over Tehran's nuclear program and sanctions.
Talks held today were very serious. We hope that we can continue the talks over the removal of sanctions and nuclear issues with practical proposals and solutions.
But so far, Iran has refused to talk about its missile program or its support for proxy groups. Last night, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said he has high hopes for diplomacy, but also emphasized the reality when it comes to the Iranian regime.
After their nuclear program was obliterated, they were told not to try to restart it. They're not enriching right now, but they're trying to get to the point where they ultimately can.
In an effort to pressure Tehran into a deal, the U.S. is continuing its military buildup in the region, with about a dozen F-22 fighter jets arriving at an Israeli air base for the first time yesterday, though Democrats are warning the Trump administration that any military action must have congressional approval.
Confronting Iran and halting its nuclear ambitions requires a strategy, clarity, transparency. But thus far, we're getting none of that from the administration.
If the U.S. strikes, Iran has said that American military bases in the region would be considered legitimate targets. In Tel Aviv, Trey Yingst, Fox News.
And you're taking a live look there out of Jerusalem. Now, you may remember just a short time ago, President...
More updates. Bad sign for the region. The U.S. evacuates non-emergency personnel from Israel amid the Iran tensions. Now, do me a favor before I play the video clip. If you can still hear me and see me okay, drop a 5x5. I'm seeing that there was a little bit of a connection issue. Let me know if you can still hear me and see me okay. Just want to double check to make sure. So drop a 5x5 if you can still hear me and see me okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and play the video footage. I'm seeing them. Okay, awesome. So we had a little bit of a disconnection there for a second, I think, but we're still good. Let's go ahead and play this footage.
Officials say they've made significant progress in the Iran nuclear talk, but our embassy in Jerusalem is evacuating some non-emergency personnel. National Security Institute founder Jamil Jaffer joins me now. Jamil, I've got to call this ominous. When you start evacuating people, that to me is ominous. What say you?
Yeah, I agree with you, Stuart. I think this is a bad sign for the region. It suggests that we are going to get involved in some sort of altercation with the Iranians. It's been brewing for a while. Obviously, we have two aircraft carriers now in the region, one in the Mediterranean, one in the Gulf. A lot of forces have been flown to the region. We've all seen on X and other social medias. The Iranians haven't yet been willing to give up their domestic enrichment. They haven't been willing to give up their ballistic missile capabilities, and they haven't been willing to agree to stop funding terrorist groups like Hamas and Hezbollah.
They keep talking. That's all they ever do, making promises and keep talking. Would it be possible for the president to order a minor strike in Iran just to get them going, to convince them that, you know, there's more to come if you don't play ball?
It's a great question, Stuart, and this has been some of the talk that we've seen in the media over the last few days, that perhaps what the president might do is engage a strike, make clear to them that we mean business, and then try to drive them back to the negotiating table. The president doesn't want a large-scale war. Vice President J.D. Vance made clear that we're not going to engage in a long extended war. At the same time, if you're going to try to change the government or change fundamental decision-making there, you might have to do a lot more than just a handful of strikes. So it's unclear whether a small strike will work. We obviously know that we had that strike last year that took out a significant portion of their nuclear program. That didn't fundamentally change their negotiating dynamic, so who knows what will happen next.
Got it. We're going to change the subject for a second, Jamil. 4 of the people who were shot and killed by Cuban authorities.
There you have it, you guys. So we're hearing that conflict is potentially going to be launching here very soon. That evacuation, he said, is ominous. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think it is ominous? Do you think that this is essentially sealing the fate, that we are going to see attacks as the evacuation order has been issued? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. But let's go ahead and take a look at this article so that way you can see the latest here. U.S. says that the staff can leave Israel, urging speed as possible Iran strikes loom. In an email to the embassy workers Friday morning today, Ambassador Mike Huckabee warned them that if they wanted to leave Israel, that they should do so today. And again, he said, this is ominous. This is the writing on the wall. It is time. Let's go ahead and take a look at this. With the threat of a U.S. strike on Iran looming, the United States Embassy in Jerusalem has told its workers that they may leave Israel and warned them that if they want to, it is vital that they do so immediately. The directive came from Ambassador Mike Huckabee in an email to embassy workers at the U.S. mission on Friday, a copy of which was reviewed by the New York Times. Now, those wishing to leave should do so today, Mr. Huckabee wrote, urging them to find flights out of Ben Gurion Airport to any destination of which that they could book passage. There is no need to panic, he added, but for those desiring to leave, it's important to make plans to depart sooner rather than later. And let me know your thoughts. Again, is this ominous? Is this essentially saying war is about to come, and if you need to leave, do so today, because we could see potential strikes as soon as tomorrow? Yes or no? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Now, the email, which was verified by 3 people with knowledge of the matter, made no explicit mention of Iran. It followed meetings and phone calls through the night, Mr. Huckabee wrote to employees, and resulted from an abundance of caution and conversations with the State Department in which officials agreed that the safety of the embassy staff was a priority. The embassy's move will likely result in high demand for airline seats today, he said in an email. Focused on getting a seat to any place from which you can then continue travel to D.C., but the first priority will be getting expeditiously out of the country. He added that while there might be more outbound flights in the coming days, there also might not be. Already, KLM, the Dutch airline, has suspended services to Israel, citing commercial and operational considerations. Israel is a likely target for retaliation by Iran for its allies if it is attacked by the United States. Now, in the email, Mr. Huckabee told embassy employees that the mission had shifted to an authorized departure footing as of 10 a.m. Friday. That allows non-essential personnel and their dependents to evacuate at the government's expense when U.S. national interests or imminent threat to life requires it, according to the State Department's regulations. Mr. Huckabee told embassy workers that he would hold a town hall meeting to provide additional information at 12:30 p.m. Later on Friday, the State Department announced that Secretary of the State Marco Rubio would travel to Israel earlier next week to discuss Iran, Lebanon, and Gaza. Iran and the United States concluded a 6-hour round of talks in Geneva on Thursday yesterday, with neither a diplomatic breakthrough nor an impasse on American demands that Tehran completely dismantled its nuclear program. Iranian officials and Omanian mediators said that the two sides had agreed to continue talking next week in an effort to avert war. But it was notable that the 2 American negotiators, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, remained silent about the current status of the negotiations, with the White House declining to comment. Now, American officials have said that among the options Mr. Trump is considering are initial targeted strikes on military and nuclear sites in Iran to force the government into giving more concessions for a deal, and, if that failed, more widespread strikes, including creating conditions for regime change, so essentially taking out the IRGC. The State Department issued a travel advisory on Friday today in which it confirmed the shift to authorized departure for the U.S. mission in Israel and urged other Americans to reconsider travel to both Israel and the West Bank, citing terrorism and civil unrest. Thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Appreciate that a ton. The State Department has taken precautions already elsewhere in the region. On Monday, the U.S. Embassy in Lebanon ordered the departure of all non-emergency personnel and the family members of all government personnel. Other countries are making similar moves. Australia said on Wednesday that the dependence of its diplomats in Israel and Lebanon should leave those countries, and has offered voluntary departures to the dependents of its staff in the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and Jordan. The United Kingdom said its diplomats had been pulled out of Iran and issued a warning against all travel to the country. The French Foreign Ministry also advised against traveling to Israel as well. So it sounds like they are anticipating the United States is going to be striking Iran. Iran is going to be striking back against Israel and U.S. military assets in the region. Here is another one giving us some more information as well. The U.S. has evacuated the Israeli embassy staff as Trump's Iran decision looms. The U.S. State Department announced on Friday that it started evacuating non-emergency government personnel from the embassy in Israel and their family members, citing safety risks and growing tension with Iran. And as we heard from that last video clip, they're saying this essentially means we are likely going to war. This is very ominous, was the word that was used, and I saw a lot of people putting yes in the comments that they agree. The decision signals that a joint U.S.-Israeli military campaign against Iran could be imminent. In such a case, Iran could launch ballistic missiles towards Israel and U.S. targets in the region. Earlier this week, the U.S. evacuated all non-essential staff and their family members from the embassy in Beirut as well. Strikes on Iran could cause a war between Israel and Hezbollah to erupt. Now, what they're saying, persons may wish to consider leaving Israel while commercial flights are available, the State Department said. U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee wrote in a message to the embassy staff that whoever wants to leave the country should do so Friday today. The evacuation is only for non-essential staff, and the embassy will continue operating. The ambassador, diplomats, and U.S. personnel working on assistance to U.S. citizens, security, military, political, and intelligence affairs will stay in the country. Now, driving the news, President Donald Trump said in his State of the Union speech on Tuesday that he prefers a diplomatic solution to this crisis with Iran, but at the same time laid out a case for a potential war against the Islamic Republic. The top U.S. military commander in the Middle East briefed President Donald Trump on Thursday about the options for military action against Iran. This was the first time that the commander of the U.S. Military Central Command, Admiral Brad Cooper, briefed Trump since the beginning of the crisis with Iran last December. And again, that was just yesterday that we saw that unfold. In recent weeks, Trump has ordered a massive U.S. military buildup in the Middle East. Cooper's briefing was another sign that Trump's Iran decision could be imminent. Now, between the lines, the ongoing military buildup, the military briefings for the president, and the evacuation of the embassy in Israel stand in stark contrast to claims by the U.S., Iran, and Omanian officials that the nuclear talks in Geneva on Thursday were positive and made progress. On the other side, the spokesperson for Iran's armed forces said on Friday that any unwise American action will lead to a widespread fire in the region. He added that in the event of any confrontation, U.S. interests in the region will be within range of Iranian missiles. We do not seek to ignite wars, but we are not afraid of them, and we will vigorously defend our homeland and the interests of our people, Iranian Brigadier General Abdefazl Shakarchi said. Now, what to watch for? The Omanian Foreign Minister, Badr al-Busadi, who is the main mediator between the United States and Iran, is visiting Washington on Friday today for a meeting with Vice President Vance, sources have said. And we saw that J.D. Vance actually responded. We're going to be taking a look at that here in just a second. And he said this will not be a forever war. We will strike Iran. It'll be quick. It'll be precise. We're going to be taking care of business. If you like the sound of that, drop USA in the comments. J.D. Vance saying, hey, we're going to strike. This will not drag on forever. We're going to go ahead and cut off the head of the IRGC if we have to. Now, we're also hearing, take a look at this. China is telling its citizens today, get out of Iran. Evacuate as soon as possible. China warns its citizens to avoid traveling to Iran, citing a significant rise in external security risks as the country faces threats of U.S. strikes. So in the last 24 hours, we are hearing They are saying, get out of the area. In light of the current security situation in Iran, China's foreign ministry and Chinese embassies and consulates in Iran remind Chinese citizens to avoid traveling to Iran for the time being, Beijing's foreign ministry has said in a statement. Chinese nationals currently in Iran are advised to strengthen safety precautions and evacuate as soon as possible. So they are saying, get out of the area. It looks like we're going to be seeing war unfold here very soon. Now, we will see. I will keep you up to date, but we're hearing that President Donald Trump is keeping his military options on the table, front and center. And here is one coming out from Fox Business that says, strike hard. Let me know. Do you think that we should strike the IRGC? If you think so, put yes. If you think no, put no. But let's go ahead and take a look at this footage.
Welcome back. New this morning, Vice President J.D. Vance quieting concerns of a potential war in the Middle East, saying yesterday there, quote, is no chance a military strike would result in a years-long-out war. The U.S. and Iran are set to resume nuclear talks next week in Vienna after wrapping up a third round of talks yesterday in Geneva. Leaders in Oman said significant progress had been made and technical negotiations will begin on Monday, easing near-term fears of military action ahead of the president's deadline. Iran's foreign minister is demanding that the U.S. drop its excessive demands for a deal, while Washington says it's steadfast on not allowing Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon. Joining me now is Heritage Senior Research Fellow Steve Yates. Steve, what's your reaction to all of this? And I've got to tell you, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and I think that all of this is more about China than it is about Iran. And looking at the enormous armada that the president has stationed in striking distance with Iran, I think is a serious message to China. What is your reaction?
Well, Maria, I agree that there's a significant element of that. China has played an enabling role historically over recent decades, helping countries like Iran bust out of sanctions. The armada there definitely gets in the way of illicit energy transactions that would be key to the economics of Iran in a time of crisis. And so and there's also a demonstration effect that America, no matter what anyone wants to say or think, and the Communist Party of China likes to say a lot about the West, we do still have unique, comprehensive power that can be deployed to key areas of the world, and there's almost nothing they're going to be able to do about it when we are so motivated. So I think the president has really taken a new definition of maximum pressure, and he wants negotiations to be the result, but he will preserve the right and ability to strike hard. I think that does send a new and clearer deterrent message to China if they're rational and watching how it's unfolding.
Well, I mean, look, final word on Iran. Are you expecting this to end in strikes and taking out the Khomeini regime?
I do expect there to be strikes, but I expect them to be targeted with a strategic intent of making them sober up and come back to the table with serious intent. They've continually tried to minimize the scope of what the agreements might be, and there's very clearly issues at stake more than just the technicalities of the nuclear program in Iran that have to be addressed.
Meanwhile, the U.S. and China staking out their trade positions ahead of...
There you have it, you guys. So he said he believes that there are going to be strikes. They're going to be targeted, and hopefully they're going to be able to bring the IRGC back to the table to negotiate in a more humble, sound way. Now, if not, we will see. We saw that article discussing also that they potentially could just wipe out the IRGC. So right now, that's what we're hearing that the people of Iran are actually calling for. Please remove the current regime that is in power, because right now the people of Iran are saying that they don't want to be under their rule any longer. And as I mentioned, take a look at the article here. You can see it. No endless war. J.D. Vance says any U.S. strike on Iran won't spiral into a long conflict. The remarks come amid ongoing talks between the U.S. and Iranian officials in Geneva, which mediators said would continue next week after no breakthrough was achieved. Now, we had also heard a lot of people speculate that this was Iran's essentially last chance, that they needed to make a deal here, and if they didn't, that a strike would be coming. And now we're hearing that this is currently underway. Jeff, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. The situation with wars around the globe is quickly unraveling. Yes, Pakistan and Afghanistan are also at war. Teflon, thank you for the $10 super chat. Infantry, follow me. USA and in God we trust. Thank you for that. Appreciate those super chats a ton. Now, taking a look at this article, Vice President J.D. Vance has asserted that even if President Donald Trump authorizes fresh military strikes on Iran, there is no chance that the United States would be drawn into a prolonged Middle Eastern war. In an interview with the Washington Post aboard Air Force Two, Vance said that the president is weighing both military and diplomatic options to prevent Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. However, he firmly rejected suggestions from foreign policy experts that any escalation could spiral into a years-long conflict. So he's saying, no, we're going to get in and out. It's going to be precise. Now, we did hear that they were planning this for to be a couple weeks long. It's not going to be as quick as it was with taking out Maduro in Venezuela, but he's saying this will not go on for several years. The idea that we're going to be in the Middle Eastern war for years with no end in sight, there is no chance that that will happen, Vance told the newspapers as he returned to Washington from an event in Wisconsin. He acknowledged that he does not know what course Trump will ultimately take, outlining possibilities ranging from targeted military action to ensure Iran isn't going to get a nuclear weapon to resolving the problem diplomatically. I think we all prefer the diplomatic option, Vance said, but it really depends on what the Iranians do and what they say. So we're going to see where we go from here. Tensions are currently rising. It says the remarks come amid ongoing talks between the U.S. and Iranian officials in Geneva, which mediators said would continue next week after no breakthrough was achieved. Now, at the time, Washington has significantly increased its military presence around Iran, one of the largest regional deployments in over 2 decades, comparable to levels seen before the Iraq War in 2003. The U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem has now authorized that voluntary departure of non-essential staff and their families due to safety risks. Again, that coming out today. Earlier, non-essential personnel at the U.S. Embassy in Beirut were ordered to leave Lebanon, reflecting growing concerns about a potential regional spillover. Trump has also publicly floated the idea of regime change in Iran, saying earlier this month that removing Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei would be the best thing that could ever happen. So, man, let me know your thoughts in the comments, but it is certainly looking like we are heading in the direction of war. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at some more video footage to get you caught up on the latest. As we're hearing, this is a state of play with Iran. 4-star General Jack Keane comments on the conflict happening right now. Let's go ahead and take a look.
So here we go. The third round of U.S.-Iran nuclear talks are being described as positive by a senior U.S. official. But so far, there's still no deal. Tensions have been rising overseas, with new reports revealing President Trump is being briefed on military options. Let's bring in retired 4-star General, Fox News contributor, strategic analyst, and chairman of the Institute for Study of War, General Jack Keane. General, how much detail are you going for when it comes to these talks? What should we be focused on? Do you think there's any validity to them?
Well, I think the people who are involved in talks always see them as positive because they continue to talk, and that in itself is positive. But the reality is, when you look clearly at what Iran is and what they represent, you've got to come to the conclusion that they're very unlikely we're going to achieve anything. Why is that? Because Iran does want to recover its nuclear program, no matter what lies and pretense they're putting forward in these talks. Number two, Iran clearly is already recovering its ballistic missile program, and that is one of the drumbeats that's beating here in terms of what damage they could do to Israel and also to the United States. Number three, Iran is already continuing to support the proxies in the region, which means at some point they will be upgunned again with a potential to attack Israel. Those are the things that are truly happening, and we've already have the evidence that Iran is willing to kill as many people as it takes inside their country to put down any idea of a protest or an internal regime change. That is who we're dealing with. And what does that actually present to us then? An historic opportunity, because Iran is vulnerable and weak, weaker than they've ever been in the 46-year history of the regime. Right now, today, that gives us up an opportunity to put in place a comprehensive joint operation with Israel to really set the conditions for a regime change. Now look at, President Trump is a peace president. There is no doubt about it, given what he's done over 13 months on resolving conflicts that were too challenging for others to resolve, and particularly the United Nations, which doesn't show up at all when it comes to peace. But here's the difference. This president is willing to use force to achieve a peaceful outcome. And I believe that is the path we are on right now.
Do you believe
that would be a combined... Go ahead.
Do you believe there are some people within the administration that don't want to take the risk, and they say, well, there's a chance of casualties, there's a chance of Iraq War II type of outcome, and we shouldn't take the risk? Or do you think that there's some of that friction within the Trump administration?
Yeah, certainly, and there usually is in any administration. There's always folks who are going to look at it and just focus on the negative, adverse consequences, and then that leads them to what? To do nothing, to do nothing here, and to give Iran another 10 years to impose their will on the region and continue to destabilize it. We've been with these guys almost 50 years now. Do we really want to do that when the vulnerability and weakness is right in front of us? The historic opportunity to stabilize this Middle East once and for all, to have the Abraham Accords kick in, and we already know those countries would be willing to do that if we get Iran off the board here. That is a huge opportunity. To do nothing is to continue this. Makes no sense. So, yes, there always will people who are going to advocate, well, there'll be casualties. 2, the operation is going to be complicated. 3, there's not a clear definition in terms of an end state. And listen, when you conduct even an operation with a ground force to conduct decisive operations to change the regime, as we did in Panama in '89, Haiti in '94, Afghanistan in 1, and Iraq in 3, there's always ambiguity in terms of what follows after that. And you can't let that distort what the opportunity is in front of you here. And that's the reality of it. And I think that's the path I think we're really likely on here.
General, when we look at the assets, if we could put up that map again, with 2 aircraft carriers, Gerald R. Ford seems to be now in place. Do you believe that we have enough in the region to be successful, especially if you combine with the Israelis? Do you believe our forces are properly protected?
Well, I believe what our military commanders believe, and I know what they believe, and I know what the Israelis believe. They believe that conduct a military operation to be highly successful based on the resources they have. It doesn't mean that we're casualty-free. I mean, Iran, you always recognize an adversary here has opportunities. They got to vote here. But we can conduct a very comprehensive campaign with the Israelis to deal with what? Civilian and military leadership, the entire infrastructure that props this regime up and sustains it, ballistic missiles to be sure, drones that are in storage sites, and any attempt for Iran to recover their nuclear operation, and many other things as well. In a general sense, that is an indicator of what a comprehensive campaign would actually look like. And the resources in the region, 2 purposes. 1, to help defend U.S. bases in the region and the Israeli bases, as well as the Israeli people. And 2, to conduct a very comprehensive offensive campaign, which would reduce dramatically Iran's capability to retaliate.
General, thanks so much. I hope the president chooses to go at it. We've been looking at these headlines for 47 years, and we have an opportunity to end it, and this president likes to make history. General Jack Keane, always appreciate your insight. I know the president does, too.
There you have it, you guys. Man, and let me know your thoughts. You heard the news reporter there at the end saying he hopes that we go at it, and you heard Jack Keane say, take a look at our forces in the region. We have a ton of them ready for an offensive, ready to defend ourselves, for our military bases in the region, defend Israel. Let me know, did you think that that was an impressive buildup? We're hearing 1/3 of the U.S. naval fleet is now surrounding Iran. You saw that image of the map. The ships were everywhere. Man, let me know your thoughts in the comments. But let's take a look as we're hearing more about the alerts that have been coming out today as they're saying evacuate the area now.
The U.S. and Iran wrapping up an intense round of nuclear talks in Switzerland as President Trump's deadline for a deal closes in. Vice President J.D. Vance weighing in now saying, quote, the idea that we're going to be in a Middle Eastern war for years with no end in sight. There is no chance that will happen. We all prefer the diplomatic option, but it really depends on what the Iranians do and what they say. That is certainly the truth. Former Deputy National Security Advisor and Heritage Foundation Vice President of National Security, Victoria Coates, joins me now. Victoria, good morning to you. The New York Times, Victoria, is now reporting that the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem has told its workers that they may leave Israel, and if they want to do so, they need to do it immediately. This is according to emails from Ambassador Mike Huckabee, and this has been made out of an abundance of caution. But the president gave a 10 to 15-day window for Iran to make a nuclear deal, and we are entering that window. So if a strike does occur, when it comes to timeline, when do you think this could happen?
Well, good morning, Carly. Good to be with you. And what we're doing in Embassy Jerusalem, as we are also in Embassy Beirut, we're doing this also with the Fifth Fleet in Bahrain, is, removing any non-essential personnel. So if the president does choose to take a military strike against Iran, they'll have the least number of American targets in the region. So that's just prudence. And, the president has all the time in the world if he wants to take it. He has all the cards in his hand. What has been placed in the Middle East is unprecedented. And so if he does strike, he can do so with overwhelming force and, really set back the Iranian regime. That said, however, as the vice president said in your lead up, we prefer a diplomatic result to this. The offer is on the table for the Iranians if they choose to take it and prevent any military escalation from happening.
Well, we are hearing all the same words to come out of this meeting that we have in the past, that these talks were positive and progress was made. But then Iranian state television, this is going to come as no shock to you, reported that Tehran is determined to continue enriching uranium and rejected proposals to transfer it abroad. So even if a diplomatic agreement is made, a verbal agreement is entered into, how do we ever trust the Iranians, given the fact that they are still claiming that they have civilian ambitions for their nuclear program, even though it's buried a mile underground?
No, I mean, that's obviously the trust but verify aspect of this. And what's been reported of what Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff proposed in the most recent round of talks is just common sense. It is that they should dismantle their nuclear sites, they should give up their enriched uranium, and that they should, stop pursuing any nuclear weapon. Now, we can verify that through very intrusive inspection. So you could have a regime of that. Now, I agree we haven't gotten very far with this in the past, but that is on the table. And so if the Iranians are really feeling pressure here, if they think they can't survive, and it's important to note that the protests that we had in January have started breaking out again because they still can't fix their endemic economic problems. So if they think they can't survive, maybe they will take that good, as the president says, meaningful deal that's on the table. If they don't, though, they know what they're facing.
They are certainly facing pressure externally and, like you said, internally, now that those protests have started back up after that 40-day mourning period. Victoria, thank you so much for joining us.
There you have it, you guys, and we're hearing that the rhetoric from all of these news stations is, how do you think this attack is going to unfold? It's no longer, is this going to happen, but they're saying, what are we likely going to be seeing? Because a lot of them are saying at this point, it seems imminent that we are going to see some sort of strike unfold with the way that everything has been just coming together here. It seems like the Geneva talks have yielded nothing. It was the third round of talks. The United States, we're hearing, is becoming privy to the fact that Iran is just stringing them along, just saying, okay, we're getting closer, let's do something next week, the next week. And the United States is not going to have it. 1/3 of the U.S. naval fleet is now in position. Somebody mentioned in the comments that the USS Gerald R. Ford is right over by Israel. We're hearing they're now in position. And it's very possible that as soon as tomorrow, we could see a strike on Iran. We will see. I will keep you up to date, but let's take a look at some more footage coming out here, as this one from Fox News says that Iran has thousands of missiles that threaten U.S. bases in the Middle East, according to GOP lawmakers and their warnings.
As these negotiations continue and President Trump weighs military action against Iran, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is reminding America and the world what a serious threat this regime poses. Take a look.
The president was very clear last night that he always prefers diplomacy. But I want you to understand, and everyone should know, that Iran poses a very grave threat to the United States and has for a very long time. They are in possession, first and foremost, after their nuclear program was obliterated, they were told not to try to restart it, and here they are. You can see them always trying to rebuild elements of it. They're not enriching right now, but they're trying to get to the point where they ultimately can. The other thing I would point you to, however, is that Iran possesses a very large number of ballistic missiles, particularly short-range ballistic missiles that threaten the United States and our bases in the region and our partners in the region. And all of our bases in the UAE, in Qatar, in Bahrain. And they also possess naval assets that threaten shipping and try to threaten the U.S. Navy. So I want everyone to understand that beyond just the nuclear program, they possess these conventional weapons that are solely designed to attack America and attack Americans if they so choose to do so. These things have to be addressed.
All right, here's reaction. Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton is with us. Senator, I want to ask you this. When Iranian state television says they will not, that they will continue to enrich uranium and they continue to build up their ballistic missiles, they continue their saber rattling against the U.S., and they've never agreed to anywhere, any place, anytime, American inspectors anyway. I have zero confidence that their word is worth anything.
Well, you shouldn't, Sean. I don't either. I don't know who was calling significant progress from that meeting this morning. It sounds like it may have been the Iranians. Remember, they believed for 47 years that they can't win a war, but they can win any negotiation. I think with Donald Trump, they're likely to lose both. As you said, they're refusing to stop enriching uranium. That was a central demand of the president going back 10 years. And as Marco Rubio very critically pointed out, this is not just about their nuclear program. They have thousands of ballistic missiles that threaten our bases in the Middle East, in Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. Some of them can even range our bases in Europe. And they want to build missiles, as the president and Marco have said, to reach the United States. They have a space launch program, Sean. When was the last time you heard of Iran putting an astronaut into space? The reason they have that space launch program is it's the exact same technology that would be used to build intercontinental missiles to hit us here in the United States. We cannot allow Iran to continue to build this massive missile arsenal to threaten our people, our homeland, our troops, and our friends.
Well, it's always been a non-starter in terms of enriching uranium and them wanting uranium, and they keep holding the line, as they've been saying there publicly tonight. I've got to believe deep down inside they must know what they are up against. It won't only be the U.S., it'll be Israel. Israel has been very, very effective in attacking their missile sites, their air defense systems. So I guess every military operation has danger associated with it, by its very definition. And I have to wonder if this is a point where they're just planning to go scorched earth and dumping everything they have. And there's been reports it could be chemical warfare. Who knows? Thoughts?
Well, Sean, that's certainly what they want the world to believe and what they're threatening. And again, those thousands of missiles pose a real danger. And I know that Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth and General Kane are explaining the risk to the president, as they should. But of course, Israel and the United States and our friends have a massive, massive military armada in the region. And Sean, it's a lot easier to shoot the archer before he gets off his arrow than trying to knock the arrow out of the sky.
That's really well said. But here's another thought. What will they have in terms of military ability 6 months from now, a year from now? They're only going to continue. They have proven that over and over again.
Yes.
So,
yeah, Sean, the balance of power does not get better, and it's month after month. It does not get better.
Well said. It's going to get worse and worse. They are committed, to destruction. #1 state sponsor of terror. We appreciate you being with us, Senator. Hey, Sean.
There you have it, you guys. And so he said that they need to take him out. They need to take out the IRGC. Let me know your thoughts. But let's take a look at some more updates coming out here from Live Now with Fox.
Right now, I do want to head to some of the other big stories that we are covering here at this hour. Take a live look over the White House in D.C. as we know that a third round of indirect talks between the U.S. and Iran on Iran's nuclear program ended yesterday with no deal reached, and Iran's foreign minister says the talks are planned to resume on Monday. Today, the U.S. State Department authorized the departure from Israel of non-emergency U.S. government personnel and their family. The advisory explains that people should consider leaving Israel while commercial flights are still available. Thursday's talks came as the Pentagon builds up its largest force of American warships and aircraft in the Middle East in decades. That includes 2 aircraft carrier strike groups. President Trump has continuously warned of potential military action against Iran if talks over its nuclear program fall apart. Trump addressed it all during his State of the Union address this week, with 2 Iranian officials responding, calling his claims, quote, big lies. All right, so as always, a lot to discuss here. I do want to bring in Jonathan Ruhi, JINSA's Fellow for American Strategy. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us here and helping to break it all down.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
Of course. And first off, I wanted to ask you about this alert from the State Department regarding U.S. government personnel who are considered non-essential being evacuated, so to speak, from Israel. What do we read into this? What does this really mean for the situation as a whole?
So I think this is one more data point, and we have a few more with each passing day, that reinforces that Trump is indeed serious about having a military option, a plan B, if Iran continues to shuffle its feet and fail to negotiate on the nuclear program in earnest. Now, we've seen similar things in other countries in the Middle East by U.S. embassies in the several years since October 7th amid heightened tensions. But I think certainly this, again, sort of ratchets up that signal to the Iranians and also to our Israeli partners that the U.S. is probably getting more serious about this. I would just say, you mentioned a key consideration is the availability of commercial flights out of Israel. And we've certainly seen non-Israeli commercial airlines be much more willing to suspend those flights than perhaps the situation may dictate, and certainly that Israel's own national security calculus may reflect.
With the talks potentially continuing next week, again, we're hearing from Iran's foreign minister. We've heard from other officials that the talks could resume as early as Monday. Is there any indication that a deal could be reached anytime soon? Because, again, yesterday you had that third round of talks. We heard from both sides that they were potentially optimistic, but by the end of it there, no deal reached.
So I don't think we're significantly or meaningfully closer to a deal, which is sort of how the Iranians want to play this. I give the Trump administration credit for so far sticking to the general thrust of their demands, which is Iran has to give up its nuclear infrastructure. Iran will say we don't have a nuclear weapons program, even though that's a bald-faced lie. And therefore, we don't have anything to give up permanently or completely. We'll negotiate over minor details about the program. One noticeable detail is that the delegations reportedly included technical experts on nuclear and sanctions issues, which does not mean a deal is imminent, but may mean forward progress as far as the Iranians are concerned, because that means we could drag out the talks with very detailed, time-consuming, elaborate back and forth, which is exactly what the Iranians want right now. They want to play for time.
All right, so what do we kind of watch for at this point? I always ask that toward the end, but I wanted to kind of get into it now because all of this continues to develop. We get updates. We see President Trump make a comment. We see Iran's foreign minister make a comment. Then Iran's supreme leader will post something on social media. So what are we watching for, especially into the weekend?
So I think a couple things on the negotiating front. I don't think we're going to see much new because, again, those are sort of in some form of purgatory. I would note that a key U.S. move most recently has been to send our F-22 stealth fighters to Ovda base. It's an air base in Israel. My organization has done a lot of work on this, and as we say, that is effectively a third aircraft carrier for the United States in the region, even though it's only a dozen aircraft, and there's also refueling aircraft in Israel as well. those forces in Israel can be used for offensive operations against Iran, which is not true for any of our other bases in the rest of the region. Those have restrictions on them against that sort of thing. So I think really the U.S. is in a forward deployed posture where, essentially like we saw with Operation Midnight Hammer on the strikes on Iran's nuclear program last year, or the Israeli attacks on Iran last year, the U.S. could sort of go from a running start at this point because of the size of the forces in the region that you mentioned, because of how ready and postured they are. So, as someone who watches this very closely, I could easily imagine waking up in the middle of the night to see that operations against Iran have begun.
And it's interesting to note, this is actually a post from Lucas Tomlinson with Fox News talking about what we were discussing earlier as it relates to the alert that was issued by the State Department. He says a similar evacuation was ordered 8 days before Operation Midnight Hammer. So just something to kind of keep in mind there. Now, according to Iranian officials, the talks themselves between Iran and the U.S. are actually set to take place in Vienna. We've seen several different locations here. What is the significance there of holding these talks in Vienna?
So there's a recurring theme with these talks. The first round was supposed to happen in a Middle Eastern country that's a partner of the United States. Iran got the move to Oman. Oman plays an active role in trying to be a neutral intermediary between the United States and Iran. Similar with Geneva, obviously in neutral Switzerland. Vienna plays a similar role. Iran likes the signal this sends, which is we're on the same plane with the United States. We will not be bullied. These are truly negotiations among equals. And also, one thing that Iran has continued to successfully insist on, and which helps drag out the talks and serve Iran's goals so they go nowhere, is that there's always a neutral intermediary between them, whether it's the Omanis or someone else. Iran has always successfully insisted these are indirect talks. Basically, we do not, it is not within our respect to meet directly with the American negotiators.
As we kind of watch all of this play out, we are keeping a very close eye on the situation that is developing there. We're watching, as I mentioned, we hear comments from just about everyone, President Trump, the leaders there over in Iran. What do you make of that military presence that we're seeing in the Middle East? Because I mentioned this off the top, but that is the largest American military presence in that region in decades.
So it's very interesting. Trump issued a red line against the Iranian regime about putting down protests at the start of the year. And at the time, he discovered he did not have enough ready military options in the region, given the need to deal with Venezuela and also the constant need to have a presence in the Pacific. He has remarkably overcorrected for that deficit and is now trying to, in a way we've never seen the U.S. do before in 4 previous rounds of negotiations with the Iranians, make them seriously realize that the U.S. has a credible military alternative to endless negotiations. Iran is going to see how much they can get out of that, try to call America's bluff. Iran also has a higher risk calculus because the regime feels its back is more to the wall after the protest. They are weaker than they have ever been before. The protests certainly showed that, both in the breadth of the protests and the grievances they had. The Iranian regime cannot fix the protesters' grievances. It's too corrupt, it's too brutal, it's too inefficient. So these protests will continue to happen. Also, the regime wants the Iranian people to see the war last year with the United States and Israel as a success. The people, by and large, do not. It exposed how weak the regime truly is. So this regime will certainly collapse at some point, and it does not require regime change by the United States to do that. This is not an Iraq-style conundrum or solution. The only question is when, not if. And the question is how. Can the U.S. do what we did successfully under Ronald Reagan to collapse the Soviet Union, which is support forces inside Iran to help the people overthrow their regime? That's a more realistic possibility now than even a year ago.
All right, Jonathan, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. As I mentioned, we're going to watch how all of this plays out into the weekend and next week, of course, with those talks set for Monday, according to Iran's foreign minister. Anything we missed, anything that you want to make sure to add here before I let you go?
I would just underscore the point that for decades there's been a consensus informally in Washington for sure that the Iranian regime is here to stay. We have to deal with it whether we like it or not. And then the only question is, well, how specifically do we deal with it? Is it sanctions? Is it diplomacy? Is it a mix of the two? I think I would encourage everyone to stop thinking in those terms. We really are in a different paradigm now, which is, this regime is tottering. It's fearful. That means it may be more likely to lash out for sure and also dig its heels in. But that should not daunt the U.S. or its partners. Things really are coming to a head now in a way they never have before in this decades-long standoff with the Iranian regime.
Jonathan Ruhi, JINSA's Fellow for American Strategy. Thank you.
There you have it, you guys. And we're hearing that this could be coming to a head here very soon, he mentioned. So we're going to see what unfolds. J.D. Vance said this is not going to turn into a forever war. We're hearing that the USS Gerald R. Ford is now in position. China has told its people to evacuate. The United States has told its people to evacuate Israel. And take a look here. As you can see, the UN nuclear watchdog says it's unable to verify whether Iran has suspended its uranium enrichment or not. They're not giving them access. And right now, if things pop off, are you concerned? Let me know about Iran potentially hitting North America, the U.S. homeland. If so, put yes. If no, put no. Let's take a look at this article, though, so we can get you caught up on the latest. Now, we have heard that there are potential sleeper cell attacks that are on the line here. We had heard this before last year when things were escalating in the 12-day war. And now we're hearing there's concerns about that again. Let me know, are you concerned about that threat? Now, as far as missiles go, take a look here. I'm just going to skip through this article right down here to the map so you can see it. Iran's current missile range, ballistic and cruise missiles, you can see it can reach Israel, it can reach Europe, it can reach across India, China, down to Africa. But right now they're saying they don't have those ICBMs that can reach all the way across to the United States, which is why before, with the sleeper cells, the concern was potential suitcase nukes, dirty bombs, ones that have actually been walked over into U.S. territory that could be detonated. And they're saying that is very possible with the sleeper cells that are currently in the United States due to the fact that during the Biden administration, the open border policy allowed people to just simply walk right in. And who knows what's already in here. And again, let me know, are you concerned about that? Yes or no in the comments. But we're hearing from a missile standpoint, Iran does not have the capabilities at this present time to hit the United States, but they're saying likely by the year 2035, they will have that capability. This is the warning that is coming out from Israel saying not only should you be concerned about their uranium enrichment, nuclear warheads, but also their ballistic missiles, their sleeper cells. They're the #1 nation that funds terrorist groups all over. We actually heard this from Donald Trump in his State of the Union address as well. And now today we are hearing the U.S. is saying evacuate the Israeli embassy area. All personnel that want to get out now today. We heard this from China to its people in Iran as well. Looks like the Middle East, they're saying, is going to have some strikes happening almost imminent at this point, they are saying. But I will keep you up to date every step of the way. Somebody asked in the comments, if the war happens today, am I going to be going live again? The answer is yes. So if you have not done so yet, hit the subscribe button to stay up to date. The little icon bell, click on it, hit all, so that way when notifications hit, you're notified right away. So if something happens tonight, we see strikes, I'm going to go on. If we see something tomorrow, I'll be on here. I'll let you know. Also, all the articles I reference, as always, to make sure that there's full transparency, they're hyperlinked in the description. You can read the articles, see them for yourself. But that is the latest, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will catch you in the next one. Take care. God bless. This is Steve.